Mika in the Netherlands and Japan. Okay, so Mika apparently lives in both. Hi, Paul. Hi, Mika. In one of your recent videos, you mentioned that Chris Brunhaver, your speaker designer, convinced you that a well-designed port or passive radiator can sound fast and detailed, even though most ported speakers aren't known for speed. That is correct. It's hard to find sealed or truly well-tuned ported designs in the more affordable range. So I've experimented by plugging the ports on my Klipsch speakers, and they sound like completely different speakers. Do you think it's worth sacrificing some bass extension if plugging the ports gives tighter, cleaner sound? That's a rough one. I don't know. I mean, you're going to have to make that decision, Mika, but I would. So let's talk about what's going on. What I have said is, in the great challenge that Chris Brunhaver gave to me when he first came on, for those of you that have gone back with this series, if you remember, when we first started building loudspeakers, a dream that I've had for 50 years, ever since we started PS Audio, to have a complete system from, well, the recording studio to your ear. Here's Octave Records, one of the world's best recording studios. I mean, this studio is getting quite a reputation. It is state-of-the-art from sound quality, and it's amazing. We've had musicians, just had a group in here that traveled all the way from Michigan, before that a group that came from New York, because they've started hearing about the studio and how we provide the studio free of charge to musicians that qualify, that want. And if you're interested, you can write us at octave@psaudio.com, and we'll get back to you. But I mean, we've had to turn a lot of people away. And I don't mean that as a way to diminish your hopes, but there's a lot of musicians out there that just aren't talented, or I don't, talent's the wrong word, talent's earned, learned, that just don't have it yet together enough to qualify. But sometimes, we get the musicians like, whoa, these people are wonderful, and we make the studio. This last one was a week long. They came and spent an entire week here. So Sarita's Black Rose from Michigan. I mean, she's open for Smokey Robinson and the Miracles and James Brown and anyway, great group. And they came out here and had a blast. Didn't cost them a nickel. We covered every single thing from mastering to mixing to recording. They spent a week out here and they get all the masters. So anyway, if that's ever of interest, or somebody has a great band that wants to have a world-class studio and can actually appreciate the difference between that and some Pro Tools-based something or other. Okay, I'm going off and probably forgotten even what we're talking about. What are we talking about? We were talking about the, ported speakers. All right, when we started building speakers, see, I got completely off track. Squirrel! It was with Arnie Nudell from Infinity, my old partner. And Arnie had convinced me, and I was convinced for years, that servo-controlled bass was by far the best sounding bass possible. And I could give you every single reason. You can measure lower distortion. I mean, at Genesis, at Infinity, we used cheap woofers, but you put a servo onto it and it goes from 10% distortion down to like 1% distortion. And I was convinced that's the way to go. Put a servo on it, amplify it, life's good. And it was true. Chris came along and he said, that's not the best idea. And you can do better. And I said, how? And he said, well, before I explain how, would you allow me to prove it to you? I said, sure. So he constructed, we got the servo controlled over here, and he built a woofer system that was using passive radiators, and which is a glorified kind of port that we use on all the Aspen speakers. and I listened to it, and it was like night and day. The Chris designed passive system versus the active servo system. Chris's system just blew it away. Faster, cleaner. I mean, it was a no-brainer. It took me like 2 seconds, like, oh my God. Yeah, okay, so there you were. Why? Well, I later learned it isn't quite as simple as just that. And that's true for everything we do in this crazy hobby of ours, right? Here's what Chris said is, he said, all right, here's the secret. First off, you guys used cheesy woofers, which we did. Genesis and Infinity used, you know, decent woofers, but they were nothing to write home about. Arnie always felt, why would we? The servo corrects all the problems. Well, just like at Octave Records, we know it's always best to get it right in the first place, as opposed to adding all kinds of effects and gimmicks and stuff, right? If you can get the recording right in the beginning, it will always sound better in the end. And Chris came and said, look, first off, we start with a woofer that doesn't have 10% distortion. It has 0.1, 0.5% distortion, 1%, you know, something, a magnitude lower. That's rule number one. Number two, most passive radiators and the designers that put them in don't quite know what Chris does. And Chris is amazing at that, and he knows how to build those things so that they work. So it's a combination of skill, knowledge, using the right components. Okay, so to your question, ported speakers can be good. Same rules apply. They're not as good as passive radiators, but plugging them up, which is what he is doing, Mika is doing, definitely tightens up the speaker, but it's at a loss of bottom end. So that's always going to be a trade-off that you're going to have to determine. If it were me, I'd plug that sucker up in a heartbeat, add a subwoofer. Bing, bada, boom. That's what I would do. Anyway, sorry for the long ramble just to get around to that part of the question. You know me. All right. Thanks. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Take it easy. Bye.